Banking Ombudsman has expressed that there's been an influx of complaints over vehicle repossessions by banks. This has brought to light the current financial stress that consumers are under and knowledge around ownership in this type of agreement. Banking Ombud Reana Steyn speaks to us now. Thank you so much for your time, Reana. Let's first unpack the number of complaints that you have received that is causing the spike that you are highlighting.
Good morning. We've seen about an 18% increase in the complaints in our office year on year. And, with our numbers, that's quite a significant increase for this type of problem that consumers are experiencing. So we definitely think that it's worthwhile to give out more information around the ownership of vehicles and repossessions in general.
And giving that information around this type of agreement, what one signs into, it's also important to highlight really what a repossession means and how it gets to a point that banks then subsequently repossess what essentially belongs to them.
Yes, so I think the starting point is to always remember, and not always many consumers know this, that the bank remains the legal owner of that property that you financed. So even though you drive it around and you maybe drive it for years, it does not become your property. It remains the property of the bank until you've made the final payment. So that's the principle number one. So if it's their property, they can always come and repossess it. But there's a process to follow and a legal process. Yes, if they do collections, if you stop payment, they will first phone, they will email, they will try and contact you to see what is going on and can you maybe just make the payments and make a rearrangement. That is their first prize. They don't want to take the vehicle back, they want their money. But if they can't get hold of you, so we find many consumers don't answer the phone calls, they really run away from it, and maybe because they don't have the answers, they don't know what to do. So if they do go through this collection process, you don't answer, they can't get hold of you, they may send somebody to your house, and that person may ask you to hand back the vehicle, the property of the bank, because you've not been paying. Consumers need to remember that they don't have to do that at that point. They can if they want to. If they want to try and get rid of the problem and solve it this way, give it back to the bank, ask the bank to sell it on auction. But they don't have to be forced to do that. That's very important. But, if you don't go that route, then the bank will issue a summons. They will list you on the bureau, they will issue a summons, and only when the sheriff comes to your house with a court order do you absolutely have to hand back that vehicle. So I think those are some of the, sort of in broad strokes what consumers need to understand about the process.
Having said that, Reana, what has been the nature of the complaints that the Banking Ombud gets in this regard? You've just outlined how and what rights are there for consumers, including that, so you don't necessarily have to hand back the vehicle when a chaser, for instance, is sent to your doorstep. You can see the process through.
Yeah, so the nature of complaints varies. We've had consumers complain that the bank didn't follow the correct legal process. And then, of course, we'll investigate that. They will need to provide us the documents and the proof that they did follow the right process. Some consumers are concerned about the amounts that they still owe after the vehicle was sold at an auction, and they ask us to assist and look at those calculations and even ask us, if it's correct, do they still owe the money? The bank took the vehicle back, they've got nothing to drive, why do they still need to pay? We'll explain that process and look at the calculations. Other consumers feel that they were threatened, when somebody arrived at their home or even, saw them at a shopping center. There's some, very clever tracking devices out there in the market these days where banks can track the vehicle. So they will call us and say, well, there's this problem, this person is there, what can they do?
Yeah.
And then, of course, we also get those that consumers acknowledge that they didn't pay. And they handed back the vehicle voluntarily. But they still want us to look at whether everything was followed correctly and whether the amounts that they owe is the correct amounts. So those are just some of the type of things. Also prescription, maybe I just need to mention, some consumers feel that, it's been 3 years, the bank never contacted them, they never heard a word, so maybe this vehicle now belongs to them, and then we'll have to look into that whole prescription matter What happened? Was there a summons issued? Maybe the consumer just doesn't know about the summons that was issued because they moved and changed addresses, which obviously you shouldn't do. So a varied range of complaints, and all of them, we'll investigate one-on-one.
However, on the part of summons, Rihanna, once it is issued, one does not necessarily have to sign for it. Maybe clarify that point to demystify the thinking that if you personally did not receive that summons, then you are really out of the woods.
Yes, that is something that many consumers will complain. They say, well, I never received the summons. But if you've moved from your address, for example, and many consumers do, and they don't update their address like they're obliged to do in terms of the contract, then the service of the summons at that old address, even if you're not there, is going to be a service of the summons. The same with the letter of demand. If it's sent to an old email address, a cell phone number that can't contact you, but you never updated your details, you will not know about the actions the bank have taken. But of course, we will ask them to prove all of that to us, and then we will check, what address did they use? Is it the correct address? And that will then explain why the consumer never, knew about the summons. But there's nothing like it that they need to sign for it. You're totally correct there.
On that point, what can't banks do within this process of repossession?
Like I said earlier, I think the one thing that stands out for us is that if the bank sends one of their representatives, a debt collector, to the house of the consumer, asking them, what is happening? You're not making payment and you're not contacting us. Can you hand back the vehicle? Because, of course, the bank wants to safeguard their asset. Remember, it's theirs, and not to sort of see it damaged or devalue further. The banks cannot force you to hand over the vehicle at that point without the summons and the court order, as I've said. So that's very important to remember. They cannot do that. But they can issue summons, they take judgment, and list you on the credit bureau. And so that's the kind of thing that you must try and avoid. Rather talk to the bank early on, avoid the listing while you can still make the payments now. Already, if you see there's going to be a problem, try and make the arrangements in advance. The banks are amenable to do that. With somebody who's been a good payer and now runs into trouble, they will definitely talk to you rather than talk to somebody that's been running away and hiding for a year or 6 months. So, rather take steps proactively.
Thank you, as always, for your insights. Bank Ombud Reana Steyn, they're talking to us about a spike in the number of complaints related to car repossession.